Recording. Sachin, I'll make you the co-host. I'll make you the co-host to just keep a check here if anything needs to be done.
I think I'm already a co-host.
Okay.
I'm admitting people now somehow.
Okay. Okay.
I've admitted quite a few people.
Okay. Okay. Then I'll share my screen.
Ji.
So good evening, very good evening, everyone. And good afternoon to my international colleagues. Good morning to people from different parts of the world. We are here with the last day of our reviewers training workshop. And we have the 4 panelists today. I think all of them have joined. So we'll start. I'll start my introduction with the first speaker or the first panelist for the day, Professor Kave Shakib. He is also the editor-in-chief for the British Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. And he is at present the medical director of GMC Responsible Office, Consultant, Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeon at New Foscott Hospital. He's also honorary professor at the University of Buckingham medical and dental schools. The second panelist for the day is Professor Ashraf Ayoob. He is Professor Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeon at University of Glasgow, and he's also looking at the oral surgery section in the International Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. Also, he is in the Frontiers of Oral Health. The third panelist for today is Professor Eppo Wolvius. He is adjunct professor at Erasmus Medical Center, Rotterdam, in Netherlands, and he is also a section editor in looking at trauma section in the International Journal of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery. And finally, our fourth panelist, Professor Jane Khanna, who I believe is known to all, one and all, because he is the teacher of teachers, and actually he was my examiner, then my appointment. So every time we see him in some or other role, and he's a leader in MaxPax in India with over 35-40 years of experience in this specialty. Let's see if we have all the panelists with us. Sachin, any idea? All of them are here. I think I see two people, Professor Shakib and Professor Wolvius here. The rest, please look if Professor Ashraf Ayoob and Professor Khanna have joined. By the time I'll start with the uh, questions we have already received from the participants. So my first question is to Professor Wolvius. What do you think, what as an editor you expect from a reviewer? As you all know, the actual what all is being published, the editor and the reviewers act as the gatekeeper of the literature. So for the validation part, these are actually required for validating any study before it is published, and to prevent the people from, or the publications, to receive only the best one gets published and the rest are rejected. So what is your opinion on the expectations from the reviewers? You are muted. I can't hear you, Professor Volvius. We can't hear you. No. You have to unmute yourself, please. No, we can't hear you. Uh, could you try? Earlier I could hear you, but now the audio, we are not receiving what you are speaking. No. Uh, Professor Shakib, please unmute yourself so that, yeah, hi. So by the time we have Professor Volvius, I would like to direct this question to you. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Am I audible? No? Let's see. What is that? Hello, Professor Ayoob. Am I audible? Huh? Huh? Okay. Okay. Now? Try now. Am I audible?
Yes, now you can hear me.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you now, and
Oh,
we can
good.
speak as well. So it was
That's
muted.
good. That's good. Yeah, so I'll share my screen again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Divya, thanks for the kind invitation. Yeah, very nice to be among this group of established speakers. Yeah, it's an easy question and difficult answer probably. So I am now reviewing for the International Journal for approximately 5 years in my role as section editor. And it's I review about, I think, 4 or 5 papers every 2 to 3 weeks. And what I found very important when I'm looking at the paper, first that I see, is there any news? And so what you often see is that already some research question has been addressed in the past, and there is no new news presented by the authors. Then when it's not bad to address the same research question in a different manner, but if the design of the study has been published already and there is no news for the readers of the IJOMS, specifically this journal or other journals, then it makes no sense to move on with this paper. Sometimes the topic is, in most of the cases, the topic is already well known, but then you have a larger cohort, or it's not a retrospective design, but a prospective design. So the research group designed a study in a fashion that you might expect a good design with primary outcome measures, secondary outcome measures, good in and exclusion criteria, statistical analysis, and I think it's also important to look at what is the cohort like. Is it a homogeneous group or a heterogeneous group? So these are really important issues that should be addressed at the start. Yeah, I could speak here on this topic for half an hour or 3/4 of an hour, but then what in my role as section editor, and probably other editors have similar experience, that it's really important to find good reviewers. So in the International Journal, there is a system that you have, an online system where you can search for a specific reviewer. And sometimes they don't respond, and sometimes they do. In due time, you know your people a bit more, and you can ask specifically researchers with a specific background to review a paper. Then it would be nice to have a response within, for example, 3 weeks. So when you get a mail asking for review, please respond within 3 weeks. But that is what the authors expect from the journal as well. Yeah. And if you think it's not a good paper, then okay, send it back to the authors. This was not good enough for our journal. Please work on these items and come back. Or no, sometimes the paper is really of poor quality and it doesn't make sense to move on.
So may I ask, like, what do you see, how much time do the reviewers take, or what percentage of reviewers do accept the invitation within a good period of time? Or so what is your say on that? Like about 50% of the reviewers are maintaining that professionalism, accepting the invitations timely, and then responding timely, or you feel there is an issue that people tend to, in their busy schedule, sometimes they miss it?
Yeah, what I normally do is that I ask 3 reviewers to look at the paper, and then one one reviewer I already know, and probably he will accept the request, and then the other 2 I don't know. And that's something what I normally do to reach out to people that I don't know, And that should somehow increase independence. You really want to have an independent review, and then you see the reports, and then it's something that you weigh. I think that from the unknown reviewers, to me, I think that 50% is moving forward, and other 50% rejects or doesn't respond anyhow. So that is my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. In my experience too, if I share that with the Elsevier's reviewer selection reviewer recommender platform, we started using sending invites to different people all around the globe, and to my pleasure, I did get acceptance to review the articles quite a lot. That was quite thrilling, because maybe in this part of the country, maybe people don't take it that seriously, but the rest of the world is quite professional in the way to accept or to decline immediately, so that it may be moved forward. So thank you for that.
It varies a lot where there's a history and a background of research. So if you work in a clinic or a university where there is no background, no history on a specific research topic, and you start as a PhD on a new theme, then it's going to be hard. It's going to really be difficult to deliver the quality that is expected by the journals.
Coming to you, Professor Ayoob, would you like to comment, add on something onto this?
Can you hear me and can you see me?
Yes, both.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. This is very worthwhile going through. And I liked the different topic that you talked about. I think the reviewer's job, it should be very prestigious for somebody to be as a reviewer. If they are not feeling that this is prestigious, then they should give it up. And also, and because it really doesn't help anybody when you have 50 or 60 or 70 reviewer, everybody would like to be a reviewer so he can put it in his own and her CV. That shouldn't working. If the people do not respond within 2 weeks, acceptance of rejections, they should be automatically the paper should be completely withdrawn from them. And if that happens 3 or 4 times, the reviewer is taken out from the reviewing committee, because the worst possible scenario is to have a very large number of people, but really you are depending on half a dozen all the way through. So I think that has to be a very important issue. One other very quick comment, when you put in your list what we need to discuss, and I agree with Eppo, the novelty of the research is very important, but I put more importance in the methodology. The methodology is the killer. If the method is done properly, to be quite frank, the chance to reject is very low indeed. And if the methodology is wrong, no matter how novel the paper is. So a lot of emphasis, and you need to run training to your reviewers about the methodology, the sample size calculation, the parametric versus non-parametric, the statistical test. We are in the middle of pandemic at the moment, where science, statistics, randomization decided which vaccine we should take and we shouldn't take. So it impacted significantly on our life, in your life and on my life, you know. So I have a Pfizer vaccine, other has whatever is. United Kingdom refused to recognize the Chinese vaccine because there is no data. There is no research. It may have happened, but it's not available. There is no prospective randomized trial. People who are inventing a new vaccine in every country in the world now need to look at sample size, randomization, measurements, error statistics. If you don't do that, you cannot claim any superiority at all. So from my point of view, the killer in manuscript assessment has to be the methodology, regardless to the novelty. And I have reviewed to the international journal for what, 15 years? Now I'm editor-in-chief for the Frontiers in Oral Maxillofacial Surgery. And I have received articles about invention of new implants, brand new, lovely implants. And the people took an X-ray every week for a year. Every single week they took an X-ray. No control, no nothing, no ethics. The article could not even go for reviewing process. So despite the novelty, it's a brand new implant that could change the world. Because of the lack of the rigor in the methodology, you are in a very difficult position. You have to reject. So when I'm talking about a methodology here, is not only the randomization and sample size, the ethics in research. And you cannot say, well, it doesn't matter. I have a letter from my university giving me ethical approval, which happened in this case. There is a global ethics. There is a, Helsinki Convention for Ethics in Research, and that's global thing. So to sum this up, to be a reviewer to your journal should be very prestigious. If you don't value it, might as well don't do it. Methodology is the name of the game. The reviewer should be trained how to look and scrutinize the method. If the method is strong, the chances for rejection is very low. If the method is poor, even if they are inventing a new treatment for cancer, nobody is going to believe them. I hope that sums an important aspect from your reviewing.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving it to Professor Khanna is here. Professor Khanna, we can't see you because I think the video is off. If you could please have your video on. Are you there? Okay, so Professor Shakib.
I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes,
Hello.
yes.
Good afternoon, morning, or good day to everybody. I'm going to stick to the question here. The question said, what do you want from your reviewers? Okay. So I am the editor-in-chief of BJOMS. I've been editing for, about nearly 15, 16 years. And also I edit 2 journals, BJOMS and also the new one, the Advances in Oral Maxillofacial Surgery. My job, primarily, if I have to give it a list of priority, the number 1 priority of mine is to protect my reviewers. My core of reviewers are the assets of my journal. I share all the stuff other colleagues have said about sending 3 to 1 secure to wrap. This is a fantastic technique, but every journal has a core of quality reviewers, and reviewer fatigue is something that's always on the back of my mind. So I'm going to knock it slightly on the head. So the level of desktop rejections, it may appear high, and the reason for the desktop rejection is indeed to protect my reviewer. So this is a reassurance to people that not every single paper that comes through is going to be sent out to review. And if you volunteer as a reviewer, are you not going to be inundated? There is some mechanism to protect you. Reviewing, peer review process is a process, but I think it's not ideal. We all know it's got its faults. Sometimes I get really amazing responses to my reviewers, and I agree with the authors, and very often I don't. So peer review, you have to understand, is not perfect, but it's best system that we've got available.
Professor Khanna wants to say something. Yes?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not able to get through. The weather is very bad.
Okay.
And I'm not able to get through properly.
Okay.
That's just to point out. Yeah.
Okay.
Professor can continue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Can I continue?
Yes, please.
Yes,
please. Yes.
please.
Let's go. The next level I want the audience to consider is politeness, courtesy to your colleagues. I always tell every author, for every paper, everybody is busy, and our reviewers are all volunteers. They're all colleagues. This is a peer review. By definition, these are our colleagues. For every single paper that a single author submits, it takes 3 reviewers to read through it. So I think it's a basic courtesy to your colleagues, if you submit papers, you be willing to review 3 papers. And as an editor, I have a long memory. And when people don't reject every review and they submit a paper, I have a very long memory. And these are the ones that normally write to me and complain about the delay in getting the papers to them, and I chuckle. I don't know what else to say really. Elsevier has got this reviewer platform. It's called Publishers Academy. It's a free online process.
Yeah.
I find it really helpful, and I use it all the time for updating myself, going through it. But I think that at the end of the day, peer review is a simple process. Read it. If you agree with it, say why. If you don't agree with it, say why not. And at least in BJOMS, IJOMS, I don't expect you to be a spell checker and a grammar checker. All I want to know is the science valid or not, and the technical editing that can be done subsequently.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any much more to add to this particular question.
Thank you. This was just an introductory question to you know your views on the topic. Now, so should we? We have talked about this. That what is more important to the editors or the reviewers, whether it is a novelty idea or whether it's studies design. We already heard from Professor Wolvius and Professor Ayoob on this question. But I would like to hear from you, Professor Shakib, if you want to comment to your mind, what is the subject, the methodology, or any innovative idea would click.
Okay, I can tell you my pet hate. That's a good starting point. Articles that my boss and I do it like this, and we are amazing, no interest to me. It doesn't even get to the reviewer. Case reports, if you look at the data on case reports, the level of downloads, the level of citation, the level of being read, whatever tool you use, is very weak. So we're limited on how many pages we can print. We're limited in how much work we're going to put through. So we really look for either ideally brand new research. It doesn't have to be revolutionary, groundbreaking, but anything that adds to the pool of knowledge would be very welcome. We love systematic reviews, and as long as they followed Prisma protocols or a known protocol of dump description, the basic for the audience is that whatever protocol you use, I really don't mind, as long as somebody else can use your protocol and get the same results. We try to be as open-minded as possible. Yeah. So we look for good systematic reviews and good scientific papers and good technical notes. I prefer technical notes to case reports.
Yeah,
that's my own.
And in this pandemic, I believe, as we see in our journal, most of the journals would be seeing that rise in the number of systematic reviews being sent for publication. So
I could have had a 10-year issue of how we manage COVID from every part of the world. So there's a limited interest. I mean, initially we were all scared. We wanted to know what was going on. That was good. We accepted a lot. It was quite helpful. We learned from each other. But come on, a couple of years later, to tell me what you did 18 months ago with your trauma, it's not interest of anyone.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Wolvius want to say something. Let's hear from him.
Yeah, I think it's the point of the systematic reviews is excellent, of course. What you see is that journals love to see systematic reviews that increases their impact factor. But at the same time, sometimes the submitted reviews only demonstrate, for example, in a final analysis, 3 or 4 publications, and then what makes sense to have such a systematic review in your journal. So I would like to to ask the other speakers here what their opinion is about accepting or rejecting systematic reviews with only minor impacts. I think that you see some institutes where they seem to have loads of ideas on systematic reviews. It's a tsunami of these papers. I think, what does it add besides a good impact factor? Yeah. I would like to hear your opinions on this.
Yeah. Professor Ayoob, over to you.
Okay.
I'm critical, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Eppo. I fully lovely to see you to start with.
Yeah.
And I agree with your question. I think the problem is there is a lot of academic institutes at the moment where students and the postgrads have very limited hands-on experience and they are directed toward carrying out systematic reviews. So it's a very good academic exercise from their point of view. But in any journal, you have a very limited space. And there is a lot of systematic reviews which have a very minimal impact, unfortunately. And to conduct a systematic review to prove that there is no evidence to support any particular line of treatment, that may be accepted in a topic at a very hot debate. But to look at a standard way of practice where common sense and the clinical guidance prevail, and then conduct a systematic review to confirm there is no evidence, I am not sure that will be considered for publication. Systematic review, if it's done properly, there will be no debate about the rigor of the methodology. But again, it is the topic and the novelty. The first thing we are asking here, what new piece of information?
May I request the participants to please mute yourself? Yes, please. I think everybody has been muted.
No, that's not true. I think that I should unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So I think the big question that you have to ask, and so as the reviewers, what is the impact, and how that will change the practice, rather than is it academic exercise? Would it add any dimension to our knowledge in a topic of relevance? So the relevance, the impact should dictate the decision-making process, provided that has been done properly. That will be my point of view.
Very true. Thank you. So we proceed towards the next. Again, we have been talking and everybody has been emphasizing on the methodology part, how to get your sample size. But there are studies which are submitted with a very low sample size. So what to be done for those? Yes, Professor Shakib, please. Yeah.
I agree with what colleagues have said. I don't have a hard and fast rule about numbers. It all depends on the topic. If the question to be answered is, does this systematic review, does this paper really add anything? And if it's on a topic that's a rare condition and the guy has gone through a vigorous research and they can't find anything, I think there's something to be learned from that. But for example, I'm getting a lot of systematic reviews on the different types of local anesthetic, and it's been done to death. Doesn't matter what the sample size is. I don't think that at the end of the day that changes the practice that much. That was just my.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can just comment quickly on sample size, because this is again huge problem. So the master students need to finish in a year. They only can find 5 patients. They've done a 5 patient and they wanted to publish. I am really sorry, that is not worth the paper written on it. And I know this is blunt and some people may consider it aggressive approach, but if there is a small sample size, consider this a pilot study. There is no harm in that. And that, in fact, 5, 6, 10 patients allow you to work out the standard deviation and the expected mean for sample size calculation. So it's a useful exercise, but you cannot have a final decision based on few cases. And the reason for this few cases, because you are run short of time or the patient didn't turn up, or you have a very low review, follow-up rate. So that would not really stand into the publication circle, but could be considered either as a technical note or a pilot study, but not a full published article.
Very true. Absolutely. Professor Khanna, may we have your views on sample size? Are you
have
with
been,
us? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for getting me into this discussion. I'm very enlightened to listen to some of my colleagues. They seem to be very well experienced being on the journal. Well, very informative, and very clear in the concept. Now, the only thing I have to suggest or add on to that is that when we get a paper for review, we should see the level of the applicant or the person or from where the paper has come from. Because many times this information is not conveyed. And we get a lot of papers or review from students. When the paper comes from a student, obviously the level, the information given will be many times very inadequate. So to standardize and to make it very clear that paper should have these basics, they should add on to this. I think we should be a little more careful in selecting the paper from where it has come from, the student or the person who has written or presented the paper for getting it approved, that these things should be kept in mind. And of course, most important is somebody is trying to be innovative, somebody is trying to be doing a little research work, somebody is trying to add on to what has been already mentioned in the subject concerned. I think that should be appreciated.
Thank you, sir. So that again emphasizes that the idea may be very new, but then again you need to see for that particular to get a very significant type of result, what should be the sample size, and it is really calculated using various. So it's the need. Whenever you conceptualize a study, you need to at the time go and check with your statistician that who can help you get your adequate sample size, and then only if you are incorporating that in your study design, that would lead to something which would be, maybe if the methodology part is correct, maybe you would further proceed to an acceptance.
May I suggest something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Many times it's not possible in a particular topic to get a sufficient size of the
Yes.
sample,
Yes, sir.
or to have sufficient number of patients, or to have number of techniques to be suggested. So they are very confined and very limited. What one should try to assess as a reviewer is the quality of the presentation, whether the sample is large or small. If there is no possibility of getting a large samples, then one has to assess a small sample and the quality and the reason for limiting the sample.
Thank you, sir. So with this, we move on to our next question to the panelists. Should a systematic review with no definite conclusion be accepted? Over to you, Professor Shakib.
This is an excellent question. I think it all depends on the topic. The main question is, does it add to our pool of understanding? Does it change patient treatments? Does it alter anything? If you are doing a particular treatment for a particular condition and the systematic review shows no evidence for that condition, then I think yes, the negative finding is powerful. If we already think and we are already minded as a group of society of surgeons that this particular treatment is not effective and the study shows that it's not effective, then I think then know what you're stating the obvious.
Yeah.
I think they can't give you a blanket answer for all, and each topic has to be individually looked at.
Yeah. So what do you think, Professor Wolvius? Should there be a tendency to accept articles with negative results too?
Yes, I think so. And there are initiatives to improve publications with negative results. So referring to, I agree with the previous speaker that it depends on the topic, but if there is no definite conclusion in a specific paper, that does not say it's a bad paper. It does not tell you it's not good. So depends on the topic, but again, if the methodology is strong, and I think that Ashraf addressed this issue very nicely. If the methodology is strong, then it is of additional value for the journal and it should be accepted. Yeah. And then it's probably just a matter of moving forward with new research and work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Ayoob, may I ask you, means there is a publication bias, there exists a publication bias. How do you ensure that that is taken care of?
There are several ways to look at
Yeah.
the publication bias, and I really, this is a very broad topic.
Yeah.
There is a geographic bias, there is a clinical bias, there is an institutional bias, and there is a research bias.
Yeah.
I think what we have tried to do in the journal, which I edited and I co-edited, is to try to minimize this bias as much as possible. So any clear descriptors to the institute or to the person is completely removed. So I am not going to review an article and say this study was carried out at Nair Hospital in Mumbai. We remove that because I like Nair Hospital, and immediately as a reviewer, I feel sympathy, okay? Or this has been done in Chennai or in whatever it is. So as a reviewing process, you should really remove that. You also have to remove any affiliations because it has to be done completely blindly to the reviewing process. So I don't know if that was the professor or a researcher or whatever it is. So all the names are taken out, all the institutions taken out, the acknowledgement, because sometimes the acknowledgement will tell you, we'd like to acknowledge Professor such and such from Savita Dental College. Well, I know now where the paper is coming from. So we remove that. So you have to do every possible effort to remove anything at all in the manuscript that tells you where it is coming from, even the country, if you can. Because some people said, oh, well, oh, such a country, their research is not good. And so I don't, as a reviewer, wanted to know from which place. You have to judge in its scientific merits. And you need to guide your reviewers how to avoid this subconscious bias to a great extent. So that will be my major area about publication bias to individual, to hospital, or to a particular region.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Professor Wolvius, are you there? Okay.
Perhaps Professor Shakib can tell us what sort of precautions he would take.
I couldn't agree more with Professor Ayoob. I can tell you a life of an editor in a country where consultant colleagues are not shy in coming forward with their sentiments. So if I was to, what all the taking away personal details is a standard issue in our journal. It's done by, before it even gets to me. Even I don't know half the time where it's coming from. Historically, we had an issue with some very powerful figures from the establishment who would write a paper and the reviewers were petrified, absolutely petrified if they ever got found out that they criticized the chap's paper. Or this is the history of it. But now this is systematic. This is part of our publication protocol. We remove any identifiable feature on it.
Yeah.
And science for itself should speak for itself. They don't need any big names to add to it.
Yeah.
And that's very good
true.
for your younger generation also.
100%.
Because I traveled to different parts of the world and they said, oh, because I am from Egypt, my article will not be accepted. And I said, what a piece of nonsense. Firstly, I wouldn't know that this article coming from Egypt, and I wouldn't know you at all.
Yeah.
You know, and some people try to put the name of their professor to give it a better chance. And the answer is no. You know, if you have done a genius piece of work, it would go in its particular merit.
Yeah.
So that needs, this culture need to spread widely across the globe. There is no discrimination because who you are, where you live, what country, what is your gender, aspiration, politics. That's completely irrelevant and should not be included or should be removed from any reviewing process.
Yeah. And that's what I
Just
believe
add
all.
a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Can I just add? I 100% agree with Professor Ayoob. My only addition is the only thing that it alarms me from overseas papers. That first of all, BJOMS, ever since my reign, especially last 4 years, I've gone out of my way. I have gone out of my way to get people from all of. We are publishing papers from war-torn Yemen, from Iraq. We want people from all over Africa to send to us. There's no problem. India has always been a good supporter of the journal. But one thing that colleagues do is gift publishing and groveling to seniors. And this is really bad. This doesn't help at all. This is not scientific. This is a scientific paper. This is not a lubricant for going up the grease pole.
Yep.
So avoid those. If you want to get your papers to get through, we don't like this at all. We want the science to speak, not the groveling.
Yeah, very true. And that's what I was saying, that most of the journals have got the title page separately, so that after the submission, we don't have to remove some certain pages from the manuscript, because the whole manuscript is submitted separately and that can be circulated to the reviewers for review. And similarly, most of the journals ask the authors to list the role of the various authors. So what was their particular role of each author, so that gift authorship is reduced. So if there is a role, yes, you are part of the manuscript, otherwise not. So thank you on that. We move on.
In fact, I just have to agree with Professor Shakib again, that there is positive discrimination and the positive bias. If you are really one way or another, it's coming from a unit that you're aware of and this unit is struggling, you are sympathetic to help. You're not going to cross the boundaries of basic research ethics, but you would be sympathetic rather than unsympathetic. So, and I can see you have 140 participants attending this. They need to get this absolutely loud and clear. They will get paper accepted in your journal or in any journal based on its merits, and they could be positively discriminated toward this rather than negatively.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. So moving on to the next question. There is this peer review system, and we call that the peer reviewers are the gatekeepers. But even in the system, there would have been some shortcomings. So what do you want to say to those shortcomings? Would you want to, are you happy with those, the entire system, or you find that this would have been this way so that we can take care of certain things? Would like to hear from you all.
We have a system in United Kingdom called the training the trainers, which means that even for patient care, there are courses to train the trainers. If you are really a leader, you need to be trained to be up to scratch. And in the International Journal, when I edited the section there, we used to meet and we used to discuss things. So I think you should have an update courses for your reviewers. Your reviewers should be attending either annually or every other year a course to talk about cases, bring a case to the attention, take all the identifiers and to talk how this review was poor, for example, and why this review was excellent. You need to update them in their knowledge in statistics, reviewing the literature. So your participants, your reviewers need to be all the time well looked after by providing those online courses or face-to-face courses to raise the profile of their performance.
Yeah, very true. I think you resonate with what we have been trying to do, because with the total number of manuscripts coming in, so many, we need to have recruitment of new reviewers, and we can't take reviewers who don't have any knowledge on the reviewing parameters, what all they have to see. So we started this last year, and about 140, 50 participants were there. And it was quite appreciated. And that led us to take this to season 2. And we are here. We did entire about 9 days of exercise here, where we took up from case series to randomized controls trials to systematic review. So all, and the basic stats to be looked upon in the reviewing as a reviewer when they are going through the article. So with this, so that's how we started it, and we will try to continue it and see that every year we are able to update our reviewers with this. Professor Shakib, yes, please.
I'm going to add a slightly different. I'm going to answer the question by proposing a question. What are the alternatives? The alternative is for the journal, because I get a complaint from my section editors all the time. Oh, the reviewers are not responding. So what are the alternatives? As I said earlier, the peer review system is the least bad option that I know.
Yeah.
The only alternative is for every journal to have its group of experts with expertise in every single field. It's not possible.
Not possible.
With regards to the reviewer, it's educating reviewers is not exempt from the political influences of education on its own. Historically, in the United Kingdom, for the exit FRCS exam, there was a section that the candidates were given a paper and they had to analyze the paper and answer questions on the paper. I went through a 3-4 years search of popularity as an editor. Every single trainee wanted to become a reviewer, to do this real life and get a proper feedback. Then they withdrew this from the exam, and suddenly everybody had their limited time spent on other things. Okay.
True.
So
Yeah, but I feel if the training is provided to review, that also helps the reviewers to become better authors. So they know what is being looked upon, and then they can, when they are sending their manuscripts, they can have all those betterly integrated in their manuscript.
every time I read a paper by your colleagues from India, AJ Chaudhry on TMJ, I learn myself. I mean, there's no limit in learning. We're all learning.
Yeah.
But I think it also depends on in the bigger picture of training in the individual country. If reviewing papers is part of the tick box or part of the milestone for the graduation through the system, then you will naturally create a lot more reviewers. In England, the emphasis on research and academic work has been dampened down in the last few years. I don't know what Professor Ayoob feels about this, but in my opinion, the weight for research has really come down. Before, everybody wanted to do a postgraduate degree or do some research. The demand is not there anymore. So we're having to rely on our slightly more seasoned reviewers.
Yeah.
I fully agree. And I think you really have a national duty to improve the quality of the submission. And that can only happen when you raise the bar of the scrutiny. But the big issue is standardization, because the worst possible scenario, and I had that when I edited several journals, that one reviewer said unconditional acceptance, and the other reviewer said complete reject on the same manuscript. And obviously, they are singing from different hymn sheet. They are looking at different things. So standardization, you need to have a manifesto, a roadmap. How would you decide of this article to be unconditionally accepted, minor correction, major correction? And you need to give them some guidelines and run a workshop to start to have interaction. And you'll be amazed to see the misconceptions with some of the reviewers. So that will help you to improve in the consistency of the reviewing process, the rigor and the fairness, because that is really it. The publication of the article should not be a Russian roulette. It depends who is reviewing, because that becomes hurting big time. And the more you standardize the procedure, the more likely to be on a safer, fair side.
Yeah. Professor Khanna, are you there? We would like to hear from you. Yes,
listening
sir.
to you. I'm listening to him. His remarks are really very good, to the point, very precise. But there are little few things which are to be seen. There are places, there are cities, there are schools, colleges, but there's hardly any research work going on at all, at all. And most of the papers primarily come from the people doing the post-graduation trainees. Now, these papers, selection of the topic, correction of the topic, how the topic is to proceed, and how the paper has to come out of it, has to be seen by the guides. And the question arises that there are so many institutions where there's really not plenty of material available. And then secondly is selection of a person who reviews. In India, as far as my knowledge goes, I don't think we have any criteria of selecting a reviewer. We just go to seniority. We see person is doing in which college, professor, and how much work he has done, any field, and the papers are referred to him. Now, all the time it's left to him to decide about the paper. Now, if a paper has come from a student and that chap has a very limited sample, maybe the material is good and it is rejected, I don't think it's fair. It's important, as has been pointed out earlier also, the material which is put in is very important. The efforts of the person, his sincerity about the topic he's talking about, entering into and trying to make something out of it. Because this way we encourage the students. The trainees are being encouraged. If we just try and reject papers and throw on one side, I think this would create a lot of problems. So it's for the reviewer, his own mind, his application. When we review paper, we normally don't look at this from where it has come, who's done it. Most of us don't know also. But we go to the quality, what has been mentioned, what has been written, what the person has tried to contribute to the science. And we go on to that. Nothing beyond that. Our system at present is not standardized. We don't have the reviewers who have been selected or appointed as reviewers. Papers just go anywhere to anybody. So I don't know what to say about it.
Yes, that's true. So that's why there is a need to build up our reviewer system. So make them stronger and give them feedback on how they are reviewing, and then bring them to a standard level so that the articles which are selected are, yes, sir.
Can I just address Professor
Yes.
Khanna's?
Yes,
Professor
please.
Khanna, lovely to hear you. I would have loved to see you.
After a long time, I have listened to you.
Yes, I've operated in Professor Khanna in Nair Hospital many years ago, and I remember that was a lot of admiration. Professor Khanna, I believe India should lead the world in research. They should. Why they should lead the world in research? Huge human intellect, enormous number of people, fantastic infrastructure. So why that's not happened in certain research aspect? Because a lot of compromises and some shortcuts. And again, I like India dearly. That is why I have the freedom to criticize. So what we should do with those students who have very limited resources, are we gonna prevent them from publishing? Not really. So you could be in a position to release a volume per year. And that is called research attempts, research aspirations. And that will be limited to few articles which do not reach the level of sample size that you are comfortable with, but you will acknowledge this as an attempt that require further proper research. You can even do it online. There are several journals where they may not accept your article to appear in the volume, but they keep it in a repository digitally. So you need to find a way to address Professor Khanna's and many other concerns. What would we do if I have a low sample size? But also your main aim that this journal act as the yardstick, the reference, because you wanted to have a high impact factor. You need that whatever is published in your journal considered of international standard. And you cannot do that if you accept some areas of weakness, which is not the researcher's problem. Yeah. So putting a digital version, putting a volume once every year into attempts, but your main focus would be the proper studies the people should be eager to read your journal because it has been through a lot of scrutiny. That's the way I consider it, but perhaps my colleagues may agree or disagree.
No, very nicely said. Professor Shakib, would you also want to share some thoughts on that? I know.
So
Yeah.
you are muted, Shakib.
I'm not as good as I used to be with the computers. Forgive me, sir. The two journals that I edit are owned by the British Association of Oral Maxillofacial Surgeons. So twice a year, I have to go to the council to answer any questions. And what Professor Khanna has highlighted has been said in different forms, essentially meaning that we have to enable youngsters and we have to understand limitations. But the problem is that if you are going out there in the real world, competitive world, and you are presenting a competitive product, a journal, you can't really allow gift publishing. You can be sympathetic, you can help the author, but there's a standard that it needs to be met. Whether the unit does research or doesn't do research, I hate to be so blunt, but that in a global thing, it really is not an issue to consider for the paper. Hence, we have organized a two-tier system. Some associations have a more scientifically based journal, and they have one less scientifically emphasized journal. And with the less scientific one, it can be a little bit more tolerant, a bit more inclusive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's a league table of journals, and we're all being compared, and the quality is there. And they said, why don't you accept more papers from the juniors, case reports? But nobody reads them.
Yeah.
That's the honest answer.
Yeah. So as a journal editor, your aim is to be competing with the journals which are internationally dealing with the same topic. And then you accordingly choose the best, which articles which you think are going to be cited or will bring that citation.
Yeah. To the global. You read, cited, all of the above, any tool you want to measure. In my experience, read, cited, actually go hand in hand. If the topic is interesting, people download it, people cite it, and people read it.
Yeah.
The other way around this is also you go to these people. So in the international journal, we run what we call it how to get it published symposium, and talking to people about the hierarchy of the strength of publication literature, how to structure, how to review the literature, how to present your data. And we were 4 or 5 of us, but we went with this course all over the world. So you need to have this course, go and speak to people in Mumbai, in Chennai, in Calcutta, and talk to them. The philosophy of the journal is this is what we need. So it will have significant impact. Would that eliminate the small sample size in some study? Of course not. But it is a continuous refinement process. Rather than you have 80% of these small sample, it becomes 70. Then next year it becomes 60. Then in 4 or 5 years time, it's much less and less. So the journal is not only to accept or to reject, the journal has a responsibility to educate people.
Yeah. So let me tell you that even at GeoBCR, we do have a rejection rate of about 80%. So many of them are rejected just from the desk. And as Professor Shakib said, to prevent the reviewer fatigue, the desk rejection helps that, and the only articles which appear that they have a sound methodology or some novelty are processed and sent to the reviewers. So what would you say, Professor Ayoob? How can we, sometimes it happens that the article is sent and then we hear only about after 4 or 5 months that your is still in the editorial system and you haven't heard, then the authors start writing. So is there anything which can be done to speed up the peer review, also to enhance the reliability and the validity of the review? So any steps should be taken?
I think we've touched on that a little bit early.
Yeah.
The reliability, the reproducibility of the reviewers will only happen if you have a standard protocol that all of them has to follow in the assessment. And they have to consider, did you look at statistics? Yes, no. Was the sample size adequate? Yes or no. Was the review of literature adequate? Yes or no. Have they randomized the sample error of the method? Is the conclusion valid, the discussion deep? So you need to have a template for everybody to, that will improve your reliability and the reproducibility.
Yes.
You also need to back again educate them. You know, the reviewers may have aspiration to help, but if they are not fully guided of what are we looking at as a group of reviewers, we will look at different things. And you cannot tell me it's wrong if I'm looking at the car of the color and I like the red color and the other is interested in anti-lock brake system but doesn't look at the color. We will come to do different reports. But if you tell us what you wanted to look at, that's important. The whole peer reviewing process time-wise should be automatic. So after 2 weeks, and that happens, Professor Shakib can enlighten you more with the journal or maxillofacial surgery. If you don't respond within 2 weeks, they will give you one reminder, then it's withdrawn. If you accepted, you have a deadline, and automatically after a few days from the deadline, if you don't respond, it's completely withdrawn from you. An email will tell you, a robot will tell you, sorry, you have not been, your efforts are not required for this journal anymore. But you as an editor of the journal, you started to log how many people responded, how many people rejected, and then you started to say, look, you cannot reject 30 articles and you still be one of the reviewers. It doesn't make sense at all. So education, template, and the monitoring.
Thanks a lot. We have also circulated a checklist for our participants so that they know for each section what all things they have to just click that, yes, we have checked this, and with this checklist I think it is going to be easier for them to properly review. Over to you, Professor Shakib. Yes, please.
We introduced a checklist about 5 years ago and found that our reviewers didn't like it at all. I would say 1 or 2% of the reviewers, like being surgeons and free spirits, they wanted to make their own opinions. Number 2 is with the statistically heavy papers, we've had no choice but to actually employ an in-house statistician. This is to help take the load of our reviewers. Lastly, I'm going to say it's not all about stick, it's all about carrot. Also, BJOMS now gives 2 or 3 prizes a year for the best international reviewer, best trainee reviewer, and the best fellow reviewer. So there's also a bit of carrot involved in the system too.
Without carrot, I can assure, without carrot, the reviewers are not going to come to review. So that carrot is very, very essential. We too do that annually in our conference. We do get a list of all the reviewers and see who, but then we found it really, there's no standard way how to assess who is the best reviewer. We tried very hard. Yes, please.
You have to go pure numbers. We've got a computer log from Elsevier. How many reviews have they done? Average time spent, how many times you've had to chase them. These are the 3 criteria and nothing but.
Nothing about the quality of their comments?
Unfortunately, that always open to bias and everything. And usually a courteous reviewer who responds in time and everything normally does a good review as well. I mean, this is a, but to stop any form of prejudice, we went for absolute numbers.
I mean, I hear what Professor Shakib is saying regarding to the template, and I agree and I disagree. I agree that if he is sending me an article to review, which he does quite frequently, yes, I don't want a template, but I am a very professional reviewer, and the British Journal of Oral Maxillofacial Journal has been there for hundreds of years. So that is a very well established, and you have a plenty of reviewers who are also authors of many manuscripts. But at an early stage, and you consider relatively young journal, and your reviewers still within an early years of the rigorous reviewing process, guiding them through a structured process, I believe it's beneficial. You could withdraw that gradually as you started to get some degree of autonomy and a clear description of how they reach to a particular decision. That's the time when you say, it doesn't look there is a need for that anymore. But an early stage of the journal where people could criticize your reliability, could say there is a bias, you don't like such and such, you know, then you need to see or to be transparent to everybody that you are above board. We've passed this stage in the Western world because of the maturation process of publication and academic research.
Yeah, thank you. But I think we do need the checklist right now. So I think it's going to help them in their reviewing process. Yeah, later on. Yes, I agree with you that the
checklist is fantastic. I want them to use the checklist. It's
yeah.
totally.
Yeah, thank you. So with this, we move on to the next. What are the suggestions for you to reduce the reviewer bias? Because the reviewers hardly know who the author is, where the manuscript is coming from. So that takes care of that. But other than that, anything would you want to comment on?
So very quickly, if I received an article that has been edited from Mumbai, I know that because I know the authors, because I am the editor of the journal. I would not send this manuscript to Professor Khanna to review. Okay. Likewise, if I received this from Savita College or from Lucknow, I am not gonna send it to, you know, to Professor Pradhan to review. Despite the fact, despite the fact I'm gonna take all the identifiers out, but he will know what type of research happening in his unit. And he will know, oh, this is the research that done by Sanjukta or has been done by whoever is, even if there is no name on it. So you tend to have reviewers outside the institution where the research was conducted to avoid any potential positive or negative bias, because I don't like this team working with me in the hospital, just would like to see their manuscript and I'm going to kill it. The others say, oh, they are my pals. I'd love to just, you know, I would like to do it and I would like to review it. So you take it out of the unit and the objectivity of the assessment. So if you say, I don't like it, this is a bad research, why? If you can justify it, of course, that should be taken in the decision-making process. If you say just the research is bad, then you immediately omit this opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Pradhan, as you have been mentioned in the talk just now, we would like to have your video on if you are there.
Sorry?
Professor Pradhan, if you are there, just we want to have your video on. Are you there? Okay, doesn't look like. So we move on.
Hello.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Oh.
Professor Ayoob and Professor Shakib are here. Professor Pradhan has been the head of the department at our department he's the founder of the department, and he's known, I think he was the person who introduced me to Professor Ayoob. So I thought it would be good to have your video on as well. So now,
Professor Pradhan, lovely to see you. I have to acknowledge your presence.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Lovely to see you among the the group of experts, I had the opportunity and the luxury to work very closely with Professor Pradhan and operate in his hospital and help some research activities. We were just talking about the bias, and I just mentioned, you know, if a paper coming from Lucknow, from Arki Singh, who is another colleague from Lucknow, I would not give it to you, Professor Pradhan, to review. I will give it to somebody outside Lucknow to make sure that there is no positive or negative bias. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree with you entirely.
Yeah. So we have already, we have already talked about this question. We were talking on that. Yes.
There were just one moment.
Okay, sir.
There was a talk that young journal authors, students, when they submit their papers, well, they're not of much value, somebody said. I totally disagree with that. If the youngsters are not given chance, how can you think that countries like India and other places will grow? We have no chance to grow if our boys are not given chance. Thinking that they are students, they are youngsters, they have time for them, so it should be rejected.
No, sir. The meaning is that they should be given chance, but their methodology should be so well supported and so well guided that they get the opportunity to publish.
Correct. Methodology, if there is a deficiency or fallacy in the methodology, the reviewer has always a scope of correcting them or informing them. To look at these are the shortcomings, correct them, and then we'll resend it again.
Yeah.
The reviewer has that responsibility also.
Yes, sir. True.
Not just read a paper and put it in the dustbin.
That's what we call it as a constructive criticism. So just we as reviewers have the mandate to guide them. If there's some flaws, we can guide them to improve upon, and so,
Yes.
so that they can, yes. Yes, sir. So moving on to the next question to you, Professor Shakib. We have already talked that the reviewers' quality is more based on the quantity they do and their professionalism. So, yeah. Would you do you report, or you do you when you go through the reviewers' report, do you tend to score them for their comments, or is there something like scoring for the reviewers' comments also?
Yes, there is. We have a editorial board meeting twice a year, and within the editorial board, we bring out the list and we update. We're trying to have an updated list of our reviewers, and we keep cleaning it because this is done to help the authors through the system. So if somebody brings out a particular reviewer has been asked many times, they don't perform, every time you request a review, it just delays the paper by about 2 to 3 weeks. So because of that, we are minded, and we know that in 2021, speed is of the essence for the authors. We do that, not to punish anybody, but just to basically, if the reviewers have had a tough year, tough 6 months, if they want to come back again, it's very simple. But we just take them off the database just to expedite the papers going through. And there's always a discussion. One particular reviewer would do a better job for a particular associate editor because of their personal bond or friendship, and to the other one. So this is open to the group as a whole. Who do they want in the pool, and who do they don't want in the pool?
Yeah. Okay. May I have your comments, Professor Ayoob?
Yes, I fully agree, and I think you will get to know that there is quality after all. But I go back again to the whole crux of the matter. You have a duty toward your reviewers to educate them what is considered quality reviewing, what is the model, and how that will help the reviewing process. Because without that, they are slightly in a disadvantageous position. They are very keen to help. They would love to do well by human nature, but they need to know what is your yardstick. What would you consider as a good quality so they can follow your frame of mind?
Yeah. Even in this exercise, we have circulated an article to all the participants and have asked for their review comments. And the plan is to send them a model review comments by the end of the workshop, so that they can look at how it should have been done, and compare their comments with those. So that's how the assignment has been given.
Yeah.
For the participants. Yeah.
Professor Shakib highlighted the importance also of the reward to your reviewers. So you must have also the reviewer of the year. The reviewers have a particular concession to attend the conferences. There has to be a mechanism, because if you invest on them, they will provide the best of the best. And that immediately put your journal into another light and another dimension.
Yeah.
If you don't invest in them, you will lose the goodwill.
Yeah.
And then it will gradually deteriorate. So it's a positive frame of mind.
Yeah. So whatever
Yes, well,
we are
that
doing
is,
for this, yeah.
yeah, well, this is exactly the topic, how the reviewer should be rewarded. Perhaps Professor Shakib will tell us how he rewards us when we review in his journal.
It's just a token of friendship. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask for your forgiveness. I'm really sorry. My secretary is pulling her hair out outside the room. I've got
No,
patients.
I think this is the last question, and with this one short, quick answer, maybe you can just take us to what is more important, whether we look for the bibliometrics or the altmetrics, finally accepting the article. So what is the major thing we are looking at?
I think a good paper cannot be exclusive good in one thing and weak in the other. Usually a good research work is well balanced.
Yes.
And if there are some weaknesses on some parts, hopefully through the revision, we can get through that. I think it's a jigsaw, and a jigsaw needs all the parts in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it won't be a complete jigsaw.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Professor Ayoob, I think with this
I fully agree. I think it's well said. I fully agree with the comment that Professor Shakib said. It is a multifaceted, need to be rounded manuscript to reach to the level of publication and send a clear message in a strong methodology, well-reviewed literature, focused discussion, and the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Then that becomes your standard for publication in the journal.
Thank you. Thanks a lot to both of you who have been here, leaving your clinical duties aside, taking time for this, and coming to India through this webinar. Thank you both a lot for taking the time. I think we already miss Professor Eppo Wolvius. Professor Khanna,
Yes,
thank you. Thank you for your inputs. Professor Pradhan.
I'm honored to be with all of you and hearing Professor Ayoub, Professor Shakib. It's such a pleasure to be with all of you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Sir.
Thank you very much.
You.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank
okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
We do have some feedback from the people who attended. Maybe the first audio feedback we received was from Dr. Sridevi.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Sridevi, working as reader in the Department of Oral Medicine and Radiology, Savita Dental College. The Season 2 Reviewers Workshop was really excellent. 8 days with power-packed lectures, renowned speakers, were really mind-blowing. Thanks to Divya ma'am and her team for making such efforts in training the reviewers. It is absolutely free of cost. It is more beneficial. Thank you.
There's one from Dr. Vinita.
Everyone. I'm Dr. Vinita, faculty of Manipal College of Dental Sciences, Manipal. Regarding this program, I'm really impressed with the meticulous conduct of this workshop. The amount of planning and efforts which you have put is clearly reflected in this whole program. The topics of each session were very relevant and was in a flow. The speakers were excellent and they were well prepared, time-bound, and had a very crisp and clear presentation. The moderators also did a very good job. They were pleasant and very active, and the question and answer sessions reinforced the concepts. and clarified our doubts.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.
WhatsApp groups, I must say, effectively
Good
communicated
evening,
with us.
everyone. I'm Dr. Sridevi.
There's one from Dr. Shikha.
The review workshop has been a very good learning experience for me, and all the lectures have been really good. They have touched most of the aspects, and they have given you new insights and a new way you look at the at reviewing of an article. And all the lectures, all the speakers were really good. The sessions were conducted very skillfully. The moderation was very good. The question and answer sessions were also very interesting.
Thank
Most of
you.
the
Thank you
aspects have
all.
been touched upon.
There's
The review workshop.
there's one from Dr. Midhani who has sent a video message.
Thank you so much for conducting this extremely useful reviewer workshop. It was very informative and very extensive and very useful.
Thank you for all your enthusiasm. Otherwise, it had been of no use. For I hope this whole exercise is going to be fruitful for your entire career path, and making use of it. Maybe the journal is also taking the benefit out of it. So wish you all the best. With this, we leave, and we have received the assignment from a few of you, but hopefully by the within a day or two, we would receive many more assignments, and then you'll receive your certificates in the next few days. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining in.